Hello everybody and welcome to today's video, which I'm proud to say is brought to you by Skillshare. Now what is Skillshare? Well, it's an online community that is absolutely full of amazing classes on all manner of different topics. One of the biggest areas where amateur YouTubers get it wrong is in the edit. Believe me, just 1 hour listening to a skilled professional teaching you how to use your software properly will save you countless hours in the future. Luckily, if you want to know what all these secrets are, Skillshare is exactly the sort of place to go, because on there you'll find a class by a lady called Elise, and she's made an excellent class that teaches you how to use Premiere Pro, which is the exact software that I use to put together videos like this one. And if editing's not really your thing, there are classes on countless other topics, from creative writing to managing a business. Now, to join Skillshare costs from as little as under $10 a month with an annual subscription, but if you're one of the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description down below, you'll be able to get a free trial of their premium service. Once you've signed up, classes don't cost any more. The fee you pay gets you everything. And now on to today's main video, where we'll see how just a little bit of knowledge could have saved tens of thousands of pounds and years of stress. Hello everybody, a quick bonus video for you all today while I'm here stuck underneath my Lamborghini Gallardo at AV Engineering. Now, if you're familiar with the tale of this car, you'll know that it had a series of unfortunate events and a number of different engine rebuilds that cost somebody a heck of a lot of money. Now, we do believe, having spoken to some of the previous owners and people that have worked on the car in the past, this all began with the simplest of things. The car was overfilled with oil. Now, this runs, like many Ferraris, a dry sump oil system. You'll also find a dry sump oil system in things like the Aston Martin V8 Vantage and other sporty cars. And dry sumps don't work quite the same as your regular wet sump. And when it comes to checking the oil, you need to exercise extra caution. So just to tell you exactly what the differences are and how to check it properly, I'm going to hand you over to the man himself, Aldous.
Wet sump versus dry sump. How are you going to check your oil level? It's really important to understand and know how these oil systems work. So in a wet sump engine, the bottom of the engine, the sump, is where all the oil collects, and it's a store. You check this most of the time with the engine off, and either it's going to be hot or cold depending on the manufacturer's recommendation. But the dipstick goes all the way down into the bottom of the engine, and it just tells you the oil level. Now, in a dry sump system, the bottom of the engine is much smaller, hardly any oil collects in there. And what you have is a little scavenge pump, or a series of scavenge pumps, that draws the engine oil out of the bottom of the sump and puts it into the dry sump tank. And then the tank feeds the main oil pressure pump that feeds the engine, and then once it's finished lubricating the engine, it drops down to the bottom of the engine, and that cycle remains, or continues, sorry. Now, in the tank, the dry sump tank, you have a dipstick. Now, it's really important to make sure that that tank has actually got oil in it before you dip it for oil. Because if it hasn't got any oil in it, and I'll explain in a second why it might not have oil in it, if it hasn't got any oil in it, you'll think, oh, there's no oil in it, I'll put some oil in it until it gets onto the reading, and then suddenly you'll have overfilled your engine, which causes a lot of problems. Now, the reason that the dry sump tank might be low on oil or not have any oil in it is because when the engine's off and not running, the oil will drain back through the pumps and into the sump. So your pump is just a load of gears meshing together, and it has some tolerances in it. It's not a tight fluid seal. So you can imagine you've got a tank here with a couple of pumps attached to it. That oil over time is going to drain back through and into the sump. So if you've left your car sat idle for, say, overnight, you pull out your dry sump tank dipstick, there won't be any oil in the bottom of it. As soon as you start that engine and the pumps prime up, you're going to get oil onto it. So it's really important to understand what's happening with the system. Most cars, most dry sump cars, you dip them hot. So you run the engine up, you need to drive it, get it up to operating temperature. Generally, we'll try and get them when we're doing a service, is try and get them as hot as possible. So we'll run them out for a few miles and bring them back to the workshop, and then dip the oil. Then the reason we do it hot is because, or not cold, is because oil expands. So oil would typically expand by 10%. So if you've got say 10 litres in an oil system, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's a 10 litre change on a 360. If you dip it cold or not at operating temperature, you could be a litre different. So 10% of 10 litres, and that's the max and min on a dipstick on a 360. So if you're not at the correct oil operating temperature, you will end up overfilling your oil. So nice and hot, so operating temperature, and then different manufacturers have different ways of recommending on how the oil is dipped. So on the Lamborghini, it's helpfully written on this little badge here. So it needs to be hot. You need to have driven it for a bit and get it to operating temperature. Bring it back, let it idle, and then raise the revs to 2,500 RPM for about 60 seconds. I think it says 50 seconds on the badge, but we do it for about 60 seconds. And then turn the engine off, get out and dip the tank. And then the dipstick is in here. And then dip it. And then you'll know. With on the 360, we do it with the engine running. So we get it up to operating temperature, bring it back, let it idle, and then just dip it with the engine running. But the important bit is to make sure that the oil is hot and that it's done either running or immediately after it's been running. Otherwise, you'll end up overfilling it.